And welcome back to Popular Music. Today we're going to be talking about the swing era. Now, the swing era took place between 1935 and 1945, a period of 10 years of some of the greatest jazz music ever created, produced, recorded, and brought out there. Now, we call the swing era popular, and remember, we're not talking pop music, we're talking popular music, right? What was popular at that time? And between 1935 and 1945, that 10-period time span, swing jazz music was very popular. Let's begin. As always, ladies and gentlemen, you can find these slide presentations on our Google Classroom. If you want to go a little bit more in depth in terms of the content and you want to read it for yourself, you can either pause this video or actually take a look at the slides. Okay, but they are posted on our Google Classroom as well. In this photo, we have a small stage. You can see people are cram-packed on the piano. This is Count Basie and his band, very well-known swing-era jazz musician. And like I said, it's that 10-year span between 1935 and 1945. Now, what is swing? Well, it's jazz-inspired music initially developed in the late 1920s by African-American dance bands in New York, Chicago, and Kansas City. It derives from African-American English, first used as a verb for the fluid rocking momentum, right? That swinging feel. Right? It gives you that kind of that kind of lilting rocking movement. Okay, 1935 to 1945, we have large dance band orchestras from various band leaders like Benny Goodman, Tommy Dorsey, Duke Ellington, Count Basie, and Glenn Miller. Benny Goodman, okay, very famous clarinet player. Okay, and we get big bands as well that appear on the radio and jukeboxes. Remember, jukeboxes are very, very important in this time period because it allowed people and allowed businesses to have music, a variety of music being played all the time. And you can have people listening to jukeboxes everywhere. There used to be jukeboxes in pharmacies for when people were walking around. And there's actually some clubs and nightclubs, dance halls, where jukeboxes were the musicians. And a lot of actual live musicians didn't like that. But regardless, many people also had record players, so they could listen to music at home. Now, I'm not going to read through all of this, ladies and gentlemen, okay, but you're more than welcome to. There's too much information to read, and it would be very boring if I did that. So if you want to know a little bit more, you're more than welcome to take a look at the slide presentation or pause the video and read, but I'm not going to read everything on these slides. I will give you the kind of the big details. Okay. So one of our first songs, it's called Wrappin' It Up, the Lindy Glide. Okay, it was composed and arranged by Fletcher Henderson, and it was performed by Fletcher Henderson and his orchestra in 1934. Henderson, okay, his band is widely credited with inspiring the rise of swing music. So take a look on YouTube, type in Wrapping It Up or the Lindy Slide or even Fletcher Henderson. You should get some cool tunes out of there. Some really weird videos too, but the music is pretty awesome. It's a little scratchy because it's recorded in the early 20th century with the technology that really couldn't record as well. Okay, we also get the arrangements of this time period drew on musical structures, right? 12-bar blues form and the 32-bar Tin Pan Alley song form. Here we have Benny Goodman, okay, classically trained clarinet player, moved into the jazz side of things a little later on in his life. Okay, born in Chicago, toured in 1935, so that kind of beginning period of swing, and we call him the king of swing. Okay, the press, crowned him the king of swing because he was exceptionally skilled at improvising, and he wrote a lot of music, and he helped promote many different people. Okay, so please take a look at Benny Goodman's music. Some really phenomenal stuff. Okay. Composed by Vern Duke, we get this song called Taking a Chance on Love. Okay, it was performed by Benny Goodman and his orchestra, and it was recorded in 1940, so I highly recommend that you take a look at this song. And again, we have our friend Fletcher Henderson who arranged this piece. It reached #1 on the hit parade chart at the time in the early 1940s. You have to remember that we're talking about popular music of the time, and this type of sound, right, this early swing, or right in the middle of the swing period, okay, was really popular and hit the #1 charts. Basic techniques of swing arranging, we call it the call and response between reeds and brasses. So you'd have saxophone playing one tune, they would stop playing, then you have the trumpets or the brass section, they would play another response to whatever the saxophone section played. So you might get something like, from the saxophones, you might get do ba dee ba do ba ba ba. And then you get from the trumpets, right? And it would just go back and forth between the two sections. And it was composed in 32 bars, okay? The AABA song structure form. So that A section would be 32 measures long. Okay, let's keep moving. We get now to another king of the swing era, Duke Ellington. Famed jazz musician. Okay, his band grew in size from 10 musicians in the late 1920s all the way to 15 in 1941. One of his most famous songs is titled Take the A Train, and this was his band's theme in 1941. Ellington was a skilled instrumentalist and band leader, innovative composer and arranger. He explored tonic textures with timbre, right, colors, and a variety of different moods as well. And what we see in this photo is Duke Ellington and his band at the Hurricane Club in New York City in 1943. And the band stage is quite small. Okay, let's keep moving. A really big song called Caravan. Okay, it was composed by Juan Tizol and Duke Ellington and recorded in 1937. The song was adapted for an improvised melody played at a rehearsal by Puerto Rican-born valve trombonist Juan Tizol. Okay, there was a movie called Whiplash that came out in the last at least 6 years. It won a couple of Academy Awards. A very awesome movie about a young musician who has gone to a school very similar to Juilliard, who's training to be a jazz drummer, jazz percussionist, and they come up with their own version of this. They play the song Caravan. It's a very, very fast-paced swing song. It's very awesome. Here, we're going to talk about Count Basie and this Kansas City style of swing music. We call him Count Basie for a number of different reasons, but his jazz piano playing in big bands was most closely related to the blues traditions. This is Count Basie, a photo of Count Basie playing at the piano. Okay, and we get this new style, right? This Kansas City swing style. Very hard swung. Do-ba-do-ba-do-ba-do-ba-do-do-ba-boom-ba-do-ba. Right, these very hard swung eighth notes. And at this time, there were few jazz musicians that had actual training in these charts. And so Count Basie wrote a lot of music that is even still some of these head tunes and charts that are still even played today. Now, one of the songs by Basie, okay, is 1 O'Clock Jump. I highly recommend that you take a look at this song. Awesome song, awesome tune. Okay, it's very energetic, just as in the style of Kansas City. Okay, very energetic rhythms. There's an emphasis on improvisation, so you get a lot of people soloing, which is not written music. Okay, just the chord structure. And there's a lot of reliance on informal and flexible head arrangements. So these head arrangements, these very short beginning pieces and usually end pieces of tunes, okay, that the bands would play together, and then everybody would improvise either through solo improvisation or through collective improvisation, where you have more than one musician soloing or improvising at the same time. We then get into Glenn Miller, okay, in the early, very early 20th century. Okay, superstar of swing, played many different instruments, including the trombone as well as clarinet. Okay, he launched his band in 1937, breaking records for both record sales and concert attendance. So his music, the swing music of Glenn Miller, huge, very, very big. And the kind of the main song of his is this song called "In the Mood," one that I highly recommend you search up on YouTube. It is very recognizable, and I can almost guarantee that some of you listening to this presentation are actually going to know this song. Okay, it alternates 12-bar blues with 8-bar phrases, very similar to the Tin Pan Alley style of music. Okay, the main riff featured saxophones, and it's very predictable in terms of its musicality, right? People at this time wanted to listen to music that they could remember, that they could leave the clubs or leave their houses after listening to this and actually hum the tune, remembering the tune. That was the beauty of swing music, is that, sure, there was some soloing in there, there's lots of improvisation, but the main tunes are tunes that are easily remembered, and Glenn Miller was really good at that, especially in this song, "In the Mood." Now we get some female jazz singers. There are the majority of jazz singers in this time period, in the swing period from 1935 to 1945, are actually female singers. And we get some really famous ones like the Boswell sisters, Billie Holiday, and especially Ella Fitzgerald, who all three of these groups and musicians are exceptionally influential in terms of jazz singing, even to today. When you look at singers like Nora Roberts, it is very, very, very awesome, and very inspired by people such as Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald. And we get vocal harmony groups as well. Okay, they were really popular. Okay, the Mills Brothers were also the most successful and longest-lived vocal group from the era. They're an African-American vocal group, accompanied only with guitar as the instrumental. Herbert, Harry, Donald, and John Mills Jr., they're all brothers from Ohio who started to sing together and record together. In 1931, they recorded the Tiger Rag, which is one of their most famous songs, as well as the song titled Paper Doll. It was recorded in 1942, and it had great success the year later, and it actually sold 6 million copies. The record, the song itself, sold 6 million copies. Insane for this time period. And now we're kind of moving into the Second World War, where people were staying at home a lot, and they needed music to really uplift the spirits, especially during the Second World War. Okay, let's keep moving on. Country music in the swing era, we get Roy Acuff, okay, the Singing Cowboys and Western Swing. Okay, we get the indie records starting here, right? Independent records, where a lot of these early country music stars, out of the Great Depression, okay, and the Dust Bowl, started really to make music and record music and kind of enliven the industry once more. We get Roy Claxton Acuff, Acuff. Okay, he was the most popular hillbilly singer of the swing era. Okay, and just so everybody's aware, hillbilly records and hillbilly music, okay, actually turns into what we know today as R&B, rhythm and blues. It stems from hillbilly records. Very old-timey. Okay, we get a lot of orchestral instruments such as the violin, the viola, lots of banjo in here. Okay, banjo and fiddle. One of his songs, okay, The Great Speckled Bird, one of his most famed songs. Okay, it was widely regarded as the national anthem of country and Western music for a long period of time in the 20th century. Excuse me, all the way up until probably 1960, until country music, 1950s, 1960s, when country music really started to kind of take hold a little more. Okay, we also get Gene Autry, okay, also a very famous country music person, a musician. Now, increasing professionalism of country music, right? There's lots of close links between Western themes in popular music and Hollywood films, right? Films in Hollywood wanted that ideal sound from country music, and there was this combination between country music and swing music that Hollywood really liked. One of Bob Nolan's songs, okay, Cool Water, take a listen to that. Very, very good song from the country period. We also get Bob Wills. Okay, his song, New San Antonio, from the southern United States, Texas area. Okay, awesome song. Take a look at that. We're kind of moving into, especially in the style of combining orchestral string instruments into Western style music. And then we move into the Latin music and the swing era. Now, modern day Latin music, as well as modern day jazz, a lot of swing music is influenced by Latin and Caribbean traditions. The swing era was the crucial period for the development of Latin music, right? That groovy swing style is found in so many Latin musical forms. We get beguine music from the French Caribbean. We get calypso from Trinidad. We get mariachi and corrido from Mexico. We get samba from Brazil. So there's lots of different styles here. Xavier Cugat is a very famous band leader, right? He is considered the rumba king. I guarantee when you listen to this music, you will dance. We also get Mario Bauza, John Burks, or Dizzy Gillespie. Okay, John Burks Gillespie. We also call him Dizzy Gillespie. As well as Machito. Okay, all of these are influenced. All of these artists have been influenced by Cuba and the Latin jazz scene. Dizzy Gillespie, right, very influential trumpet player who championed the blending of Afro-Cuban music and modern jazz. Very, very famous musician, and one that cannot be forgotten. And we will talk a little bit more about Gillespie at a different time. Here's one song by Xavier, okay, called Brazil. It is an awesome song, and it will get you moving. So, YouTube this song. If you want to know more, I'm going to skip through this slide. If you want to know a little bit more about it, have a listen to it on YouTube. It's pretty Latin, right? It's got that Latin groove, that Latin sound with many different Latin instruments, but it's got that beat that gets you moving. Okay. A song by Mario Bauza. Now, I don't know how to pronounce this, but I'm going to try. Nagu. Okay. It means, it's a Cuban slang form for buddy or brother. So have a listen to that. And now we move into the decline of big bands with the affirmation of technology. Swing era lasted almost exactly a decade, from 1935 to 1945. The Armed Forces band leaders leading dance bands made up of enlisted men. Many well-known musicians were actually killed during the war, including Glenn Miller. So we lost a lot of music there. There was taxes imposed on music and curfews, which hampered people actually going to these venues to listen to jazz. There were many struggles among powerful institutions in the music business, right? Between radio and record labels suffering because the use of lacquer was needed for the war, and so there couldn't be records, and so radio was produced even more. But radio could feature musicians without actually paying them, so nobody was making any money in the industry at this time. And August 2nd, 1942, Musicians Union formed, so the American Federation of Musicians. They went on strike against the recording companies. They claimed that the union's members were not being properly compensated with share of the royalties that their music was producing. and we get jazz musicians like Charlie Parker coming out, who developed the expressive bebop style, which we will talk about in our next lesson. Here are just some key terms. The key terms that I think are really important are big bands, okay? Swing is really big, and I would say Western swing as well. And some of the key people: Benny Goodman, Charlie Parker, Duke Ellington, Gene Autry, Glenn Miller, okay, John Burks or Dizzy Gillespie, as well as William Count Basie, okay? Those are the key people that you really should be paying attention to. And that's it. Thank you very much for this popular music lesson. As always, you can find this lesson on our Google Classroom in terms of slides. And don't forget to answer the discussion question related to this presentation. Thank you very much. Have a great week ahead.